well. Performers of Suju Opera and Huju Opera invited Zheng Xuanjian and his friends from the Chuan generation for help. The Chuan generation was in its prime during the 1930s and 40s. But one may ask why it was that these talented professionals in the prime of their lives were working for other opera troupes as mere tutors.
抗战以后到解放前这个几年中间，昆剧演员的这个也是很悲惨的，很多人是到越剧团去教越剧了，有的人到这个什么去教人家舞蹈啊、身段呢，啊，那么甚至于更惨的呢，啊，就是摆小摊儿卖点纸烟呢。
From its days of glamour, marked by a grand gathering of Kunqu professionals in Huzhou, Suzhou, to its decline before the liberation, what happened to Kunqu? Why did it yield its leading position to Peking opera? The answers lie in the years the performance of Kunqu highlights lost popularity. Qianlong, the fourth emperor of Qing, was a great lover of Kunqu opera. In fact, as soon as he took the throne, he had a number of stages built inside the Forbidden City and arranged for more than 1,000 professional performers under a special department called Nanfu to be ready at any time to entertain him. Whenever he went on a trip, local officials would beat their brains wondering how best to please the emperor, and this was usually through performances of Kunqu opera. In a volume entitled Grand Tour in the South, housed in the National Library, we can examine detailed records of Qianlong's fifth visit to South China in the year 1780. When he arrived in Yangzhou, it was spring. When the imperial fleet was just 5 kilometers from the dock, a eunuch informed Qianlong of a giant peach that had been set on the riverbank near the dock. At the emperor's instruction, the fleet sped toward the dock, and just as they approached, hundreds of fireworks shot skyward from around the peach and then split open to reveal a stage on which hundreds of people were singing and dancing. This elaborate spectacle, called the Mountain of Longevity and Sea of Happiness, had been arranged as a surprise for the emperor by rich Yangzhou salt merchants. Opera troupes from other places made their way to Yangzhou to learn from the many dramas being performed there night and day. But what were the genres of entertainment the Yangzhou salt merchants prepared for the emperor? The following is found in a volume entitled Records of Pleasure Boats in Yangzhou. Salt merchants prepared 2 programs, one being refined Kunshan tunes, the other miscellaneous. Miscellaneous included tunes in different styles from Peking opera, Qinxiang, Yiyang, Bangzi, Luo Luo and Ah Huang.
Historical records tell us that by the time of Emperor Qianlong's visit to the south in 1780, other forms of tune had gained popular acceptance, sufficient apparently to challenge Kunqu opera's right to be performed on important occasions, such as welcoming the emperor. Yet Kunqu opera continued to be defined as the refined form, while the others were merely miscellaneous.
扬州有个最大的盐商叫江鹤亭，他就把他家的戏份分成了2部，一部就是雅部，就是昆曲，昆曲以外的这叫花部，是这么样。他江鹤亭家是这么把这些戏曲就分了类了。
Among the genres falling into the miscellaneous category was one particularly eye-catching form, Anhui opera. Anhui opera, sung using local Anhui melodies, would be the predecessor of Peking opera. As it happens, most of the Yangzhou salt merchants came from Anhui, and they were powerful enough to retain a troupe and fully finance it. Naturally, Anhui opera had absorbed a great deal from other forms. With Yangzhou as its base, troops performing Anhui opera travelled up and down the rivers giving performances, and over time it developed the potential to challenge Kunqu's dominant position. In the book mentioned earlier, all the opera forms and other types of entertainment are documented with almost equal regard. With so many competitors, Kunqu began to lose ground. In books on the history of Chinese opera, this competition is called the rivalry between Kunqu and the miscellaneous.
从整个戏曲的发展过程来看的话呢，它是你方唱大我登场，
这是个自然规律，自然规律。人们能够对一种剧种已经热爱几百年，已经了不得了哈，一定就是自然的。所以这个时候，慢慢的有一种叫乱弹，叫花布开始。
In the later years of Emperor Qianlong's reign, Chinese opera history entered what is known as the 100 Flowers Blooming period. With their invigorating melodies, Anhui troupes brought a breath of fresh air to the stage, and Kunqu began to decline. Eventually, Kunqu lost its glory and its position. The very literary merits that had enabled Kunqu to become highly successful were now a hindrance. Scholars had tired of singing in the Suzhou dialect, and some even noted that Kunqu audiences were dispersing while booing loudly.
戏是演给有文化的人和没有文化的人都要看的，所以呢，这个剧本要通俗，不要太哑。
昆曲剧本里头，很多唱词他用了不少的典故，连那个念白、人物对话里头也包含了那么多的古典，那么一般人听不懂啊。
为什么京剧能够取代昆曲呢？我们从这方面来看。 京剧一个是它的这个题材通俗了，而它的唱词呢直白一些了，就让人不是特别难理解了。
The decisive factor in this competition among the genres was to take place on stage in the nation's capital. In the year 1790, Emperor Qianlong turned 80, and according to custom, all local officials were required to make their way to the capital and there offer him their best wishes. To fulfill this duty, an official by the name of Gao Langting set off from Yangzhou by boat along the Grand Canal, and he brought with him to Beijing his Anhui opera troupe. Gao Langting was already quite famous, and he enjoyed the favour of the emperor. The Grand Canal ended in Beijing, or more precisely, a busy part of it known as Haizi. Gao Langting well knew that any troupe gaining recognition in the capital was certain to become popular nationwide. Naturally, he was very keen for his troupe to cause a sensation. As it happened, the performances of miscellaneous tunes presented by Gao Langting's troupe were superior to all the others. He had the success he wanted. After this, 3 other Anhui troupes came to Beijing, and so this event is described as the 4 Anhui troupes coming to Beijing to make history. Documentation concerning this can be found in the classic book New Events in the Capital. The appearance of the 4 Anhui troupes in the capital marks the birth of Peking opera, and this form, of course, quickly gained national popularity. But with the great success of Peking opera, Kunqu quickly went into decline. This Kunqu script found in the archives of the Chinese Arts Research Institute was written during the reign of Emperor Xianfeng, long after the reign of Emperor Qianlong. By that time, Kunqu highlights were not being staged in the palace at all. The fate of Kunqu was, to use the words of a passage in the script, in a helpless situation. But yet more ill fate was to befall Kunqu. By the first decade of the 19th century, the Qing dynasty was approaching its final years. The empire was plagued by incessant wars that significantly weakened the empire and contributed to the disappearance of Kunqu from the stage. Kunqu troops in Beijing were going through a difficult time. In fact, performers were finding it hard to make ends meet. With Kunqu no longer the exclusive genre on the stage, Kunqu performers were having to accept having to share the limelight with others. Chinese opera was entering a period in which genres were becoming intertwined, with each form learning from the other. But these newer forms were in reality being nurtured on the milk of Kunqu. Kunqu was the chief influence on the more recent genres, and foremost among them was Peking opera.
Kunqu 在它的历史上积累了很丰厚的财富，变成了很重要的文化遗产、非物质遗产。它的呢，它也转移了，实现它的转移啊，转移到京剧里头去了。
从谭鑫培，从梅巧玲，从再往上，那从宫里的它是有昆曲的，它已经把昆曲的元素输入到就是你等于你身体里的血液有这种基因了就。
Kunqu opera entered a period of decline at the beginning of the 19th century. Strangely, this coincided with the time of prosperity for Chinese opera as a whole. Even so, Kunqu's influence remained strong. Much of the stage art of the new operas was adopted from Kunqu, as was a large part of the classic repertoire. Even some of the performers moved to the new operas. Still today, being a master of two arts is still one of the standards for judging the artistic achievements of a Peking opera performer. And thank you for staying with us on today's New Frontiers. Tune in again next time when we'll bring you more about the history and development of Kunqu opera. I'm Ji Xiaojun from CCTV International. See you next time.